And for those of us who are joining via Facebook Live, you know we need you to hit that like and then share button. We are doing a different schedule for the month of May because we want to make sure that we get in our 2 episodes when it comes to dealing with the mind. So we need a huge favor if you would hit the like button and share so that we can get into tonight's topic. And for those of us who may not know or you may not be familiar with kind of my background, we talked about a little bit in episode 9, and my undergraduate degree is in psychology. And just to kind of give you a recap on Jamila, I love trying to understand and find reasons for people's behaviors. So I went into the field of psychology um, first and foremost to kind of deal with my own journey that I went through and to find reason in kind of why people behave the way they behave, why they had certain preferences and things like that. And that's all a functionality of the mind. So when we understand how the mind works, mind matters become something that we can actually tackle and go running towards instead of running away because we're not fretful, but we're armed with information. And so I want to go ahead and jump into tonight's episode because we have a lot to cover. I have like 4 or 5 pages of notes today, and I definitely want to make sure that we do our due diligence and hit on all the points. I don't really want to rush through anything. And if you ever want to replay, we always upload all of the episodes on our YouTube channel, and that link is posted on Facebook Live, so you can always go back and replay so that you can make sure that you're not just obtaining knowledge, but you're actually putting it into practice. And so when I was thinking about tonight's topic, I went into like how we properly manage unmet expectations. And I think that that is sometimes a challenge, especially when it presents itself as an expectation that you didn't even know that you had. Like you didn't know that you wanted someone to return a phone call. You didn't know that you wanted somebody to text you happy birthday until it doesn't happen. And you're left with the reality of an unmet expectation. And there's no sting like that, especially when you didn't even know it was a desire. That's again when we need to start understanding the functionality of the brain and the levels of the brain and how it functions. And often when we have those encounters, it's things that are coming from our subconscious, our unconscious mind, presenting themselves in the conscious state. And the conscious mind's responsibility is to react to the present realities. And so we may not have really taken time to think about what our expectations were. Did we communicate them properly? Do people know this is kind of our train of thought? Or are we just holding them accountable to what they failed to deliver because of their lack of understanding and our knowledge? And to kind of carry the weight of that is no easy task, honestly. Like trying to carry the weight of an unmet expectation that we failed to communicate, and then having to kind of work through those emotions. It's never really easy, but it's something that we have to do. Again, May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I don't want us to take that with a negative connotation and just assume that it's because, oh, if you suffer with depression or you have anxiety or you have a chemical imbalance, and I make light of none of those things because I believe we should always seek the help necessary to help us overcome if that is our reality. But mental health awareness also has a lot to do with your thinking patterns, your mental maps, the filters through which you see the world. I think I mentioned it previously, but when we don't have right perspective for ourselves, it's really hard for us to look at the world or anyone else in a better disposition or in a better light because we haven't really learned how to extend that measure of grace first to ourselves. So, I want to take us back to this one particular point, and I want to walk back through last week's journal prompt just to kind of segue into this week's episode. And as we mentioned last week, if something is going to be rendered as truth, your subconscious mind has to accept it as truth. So when we talk about affirmations and the things that we want to speak into existence, and I do believe in speaking things into existence, I do believe in the power of life and death being in your tongue, but I think we've got to take it a step further and talk about the function of the brain. And so if the subconscious mind is not accepting something, if there is a disconnect between the conscious and the subconscious, whatever you're trying to get to manifest is not going to happen. So they have to be in agreement, okay? And when we're not cognizant of that, we are at risk for being overtaken by emotions and trauma and things that seem to come out of nowhere, and we don't have an explanation for it. Again, that's understanding what's happening beneath the surface. Okay, and so tonight's topic, if you like to take notes and you like to make sure that things are characterized, tonight's topic is going to be about managing our expectations. How well are we managing our expectations? So last week, I asked us to do some work with our journal prompt. As opposed to just writing and getting our thoughts on paper, I wanted us to walk through an 8-part exercise. I'm not sure if we did it, but I want to revisit it because I think it's something that's really, really good, and it will really help us set the tone for our day, so that we're not just becoming reactionary to everything that's happened, but we actually have strategy and we're prepared and we can actually respond to our day instead of reacting to it. So the exercise was called Morning Clarity. It consisted of 8 steps. Step 1, we were supposed to express gratitude. Step 2, we were supposed to have a trajectory exercise where we were going to take that one piece of paper and set one positive intention for the day and keep it close to our heart. We were going to have a visualization exercise. So before we even got out of the bed, remember, we were going to insulate our thoughts with the 10 components outlined in Philippians 4 and 8. So we were going to insulate our mind and our heart with the things that God has required us to set our intentions on. We were going to be purposely positive. I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do sometimes. Like when the day comes at you and it's a contradiction to what you expected the day to be, just being purposely positive is not easy. But if we can do it, it keeps us in a responsive state of being instead of in a reactionary state. Step 5, we were supposed to color code our meetings for our mindset. So whatever the day consisted of, we were supposed to highlight it, put it in hierarchy, make sure that we had the things and the mindsets applicable to what it is that we had to face. I think that is really how we are able to be responsive. If we know we're going to have a difficult meeting, if we know we're going to have a difficult encounter, what is the mindset that you need to take on to make sure that your character is not compromised, to make sure that what you're saying is actually heard, to make sure that you're not just being tolerated, but you're being welcomed into the spaces that you need to present yourself in. So how well did we do that? Did we spread gratitude, random acts of kindness? Like if you see somebody in the Chipotle line, because y'all know I love Chipotle, but I mean just randomly pay for the person's meal behind you or before you or whatever, or you see a mother, a single mother, and you see her trying to corral all the children, like extend a hand. You never know when you're going to need to be the recipient of someone's random act of kindness, so let's be intentional about that. And then you guys know I love music, so the music mind was amazing, like setting those 3 songs a day and meditating on those lyrics and centering your day around that soundtrack. And every time we need a moment, like today, I was bombarded with meeting after meeting. And I grabbed my phone, I ran outside, I listened to one of my songs, I regrouped, and I got back in the game. Like sometimes you just have to do what you need to do to make sure that you remain at a state of peace, that you're able to perform at maximum capacity. And then 8, we were going to have fresh fuel. So what are we eating? What are we feeding our body with? What are we feeding our brain with? So that was the exercise. I really hope we took some time to do it. If not, there's always tomorrow. So I just gave you the 8 steps. So jot those down, make them ready. So in the morning, you can just make sure that you go through the 8 and check them off and command your day. Because I think that's imperative. Like mindfulness is imperative. Okay, so I thought that was a perfect segue to get into tonight's topic. And I have a lot of what I may consider controversial quotes because I am Christian. There is no doubt about that. And I know a lot of our teachings are based on faith and expectation, and I do not discredit any of those things. But when they are misapplied, we set ourselves up for disappointments, we set ourselves up for heartache, and then we blame God, which I don't think is fair at all. Like he knows the thoughts and the plans that he has for us. And when what we want is misaligned with what he has already predestined, we get frustrated, we forfeit the process when what he had for us always far exceeds what we have planned. So it's best to consult the one who already penned all the details so that our expectations won't always leave us with disappointments. So one of the quotes that I found says, there are two ways to be happy: improve your reality or lower your expectations. There are two ways to be happy. You can improve your reality or you can lower your expectations. And it says, one of the biggest challenges we face in life is learning to accept people for who they are. One of the biggest relational pitfalls is not accepting the person that stands before you. You cannot materialize someone into who they are not. Whether you see greater potential in them, whether you feel like they can be more than what they are today, whatever your reasonings are, you cannot make them be anything that they choose to be. So I would ask that we take a step back and look at the relationships that we are in and look at the expectations that we have of the people that we're walking this journey of life with and assess, am I putting realistic expectations on them? Like, are they truly letting me down, or am I failing to accept the person that they are? Because this is where grace applied matters. Someone had to be patient with you. Someone had to accept the you that you presented, and they didn't ask you to be anything other than that person. It is not your job to make people be something different. Now, if you are able to coach them, if they are responsive to maybe some of your critique or your feedback, great. But if it's not what they want and you continue to give unsolicited advice and then you get upset and say that they failed you, no, actually, you kind of failed yourself. So let's think about that. And the sooner you realize that your expectations cannot change people, the better off you will be. We are not God. And we don't have the right, we don't have the authority, we don't even have the amount of wisdom required to make people be something other than what God intended for them to be at this very present time in their life, because they are all at the mercy of their personal progress. And we don't necessarily know where they are in that. So allow people to be and show love and compassion and grace. And maybe our expectations will be met because we accept who they are, not who we would rather them to be. Another quote that I found says that we are to give without expectation, accept without reservation, and love without hesitation. Now, I read that quote and I was like, yeah, right. Like, there's no way that I've not mastered that. I've not mastered the love without hesitation piece of that quote. I don't know. Like, one of the things that I've really had to work through and really ask for guidance on is the fact that some of my spiritual gifts allow me to sense and feel and see from afar. And so because those are my gifts, I would be really hesitant to walk with people and engage with people because I had already picked up on some information from afar. And so I had to ask God for help with that. And I was like, what exactly do you want me to do with this gift? Because I don't think that you're giving me this gift to serve as a judge or to not be in fellowship with people. But it's so hard for me to do that when you have given me insight on this person's character. And the thing that I had to resolve to, again, going back to the previous point, I have to accept who they are today, who they are presently. And God gives us love freely. He extends grace to us freely. I mean, he loved us enough to come down from royalty. He came down from his throne, became flesh, bore our sins, and then died a death that no man should ever have to die, because he loved us that much, without hesitation, knowing that we were going to fail repeatedly, knowing that we would never measure up when it came to our thought lives of who he created us to be. And he was willing, without hesitation, to still love us. Wow. And if we are created in his image and his likeness, then there are some inherent abilities that are deep within us, but it is up to us to make the choice to tap into that. Like, let's grow up and graduate in our thinking so that we can love, so that we can extend grace. I'm not asking you to fall in love with every random person, but I am asking that we would be able to extend love. I'm asking that we be able to accept. And the part where it says to accept without reservation is to withhold your judgment of somebody. Because the reason why we oftentimes have unmet expectations is because we judge them and we want them to be something that we can easily digest, something that we're comfortable with. Because if I'm comfortable with it, then I can be in relationship with you. But I'm sorry, that's not the way the world works. And I don't want to live in a world where there's monotony to that degree. Like, differences are what make this life worth living. Differences are what expands our understanding. It allows us to grasp information that we wouldn't have otherwise, because if everybody is the same, and what is the point? Like, what is the point of there being nations? What is the point of there being different continents? What is the point of there being different races or whatever? Like, what is the point if we're all just gonna do life the exact same way? Not interested. No, thank you. And give without expectation. Whew, that's a hard one, because we have that saying that we grew up with, treat people the way you want to be treated, or, that kind of stuff. And if that is the expectation, like, are you really giving? Like, I tell people, don't give what you can't afford to lose. Okay? So if you're going to be resentful for the time that you invest in somebody, don't give them that. If you're going to hound them for the $20 that you loaned them 20 years ago, don't give them that. If you are not healed enough to give your love without having to hound them to see if they're truly committed to you as a person, don't give them that. Don't give what you can't afford to lose, and your expectations will always be met. Fair game, right? Because unrealistic expectations will, can, and most often lead to disappointment. Because you wanted this so badly, you wanted so badly that you've materialized it as a reality in your mind. And so when it doesn't happen, disappointment is inevitable. And then the unfortunate pitfall of having high expectations in certain look, you guys, there go my words again, I'm tripping over them. The unfortunate pitfall of having high expectations in certain circumstances is what prevents us from enjoying experiences altogether. When we set the bar so high, we put it to such a high altitude that no one can achieve it, then the opportunity that we would have had to enjoy the experience that we're in, we're robbed of. We're robbed of it. If we have to take a snapshot of everything that we do, every life moment has to be captured. Every life moment has to be recorded. Like, we can't even start the song, or we can't start the vacation. We can't start whatever. Everything is put on pause until you can capture it. Like, those are moments that are fleeting. And time spent is time that we never regain. So why not take a moment to just be fully present and whatever it is that you are in, and take that in and enjoy it. Because once it's gone, it's gone. And then it becomes a memory. And then if it doesn't become a memory, it becomes a regret. What if I would have? I should have. We can't go back. So be fully present in the moments that you have. Be fully present in the relationships that you're engaged with. Be fully present with the people that you love, because once they're gone, they're gone. Once those moments pass, they pass. Like, I ran across a picture of my grandma Moore, and I have so many memories of her, right? But they're not memories that I get to live presently anymore because she's gone, right? But I get to hold to the moments that she took me to go get ice cream, the moments that she took me to my brother's birthday parties, the moments that we would ride and we would sing, and all of the things. Like, I have that, and I can fully be present in those moments and almost relive them again, because I wasn't trying to make her reach this bar of expectation. I actually chose to just enjoy who she was to me in that season of my life. That's what matters, you guys. Like, we want people I think it's It's the negative ramification of us always having to be on. Like, we don't even give grace for failure. So people can't really actually make a mistake because we're always requiring that they be on, that they be on, that they be on, but nobody can live up to that. Nobody, not even us. We can't do it for ourselves. So it's definitely wrong for us to expect it of other people. And when we have unrealistic expectations for people, the likelihood of them being able to meet us at that standard isn't likely. And it's not that they're bad people, and it's not that they won't serve us well, but they can't deliver that because that is beyond their capability. And if truth be told, if we're honest, we probably can live up to some of the standards that we place on the backs of others. So let's just be thankful, be mindful of that. And again, please accept people for who they are. I used to do diversity training, and I would always tell people, let people tell them who you are instead of creating your own narrative. Because the moment that you're willing to listen and acquire knowledge is the moment that you are affording yourself an opportunity to tap into an experience that life would not have otherwise given you. Be quiet for a second and just listen. And when I say be quiet, I don't mean just stop talking. I mean silence your thoughts, become present, and live in that moment with those people. I used to get ostracized a lot. I'll never forget it. Because you guys know my mom's testimony, none of that's a secret. And I would go to bed, I would fight you down behind my mother. Like, it's a non-negotiable. But because her lifestyle was contrary to everything that we were raised under and the Christian morals that we were raised under, people used to tell me that my Christianity was being called into question because I was guilty by association, or I would affiliate myself with the ungodly. And it used to tick me off. I really wanted to just knock a couple teeth out, to just be honest. Because that's my mom, and you're just not going to ever do that and get away with it. But the thing that I, now in hindsight, looking back, what I realize is people's perspectives are their filters. And so when we have ingrained something so deeply, and it's a misaligned expectation for what is right, we can't see the beauty in the person that stands before us because we have this masked and glossed over perspective of what is right and what is acceptable, that we rob ourselves of engaging with people. I don't care what anybody says about my mother. She will always be my mother. And I thank God for the erratic change that God has walked her through, and the grace and the life that she now leads. But she's no less my mother today than she was when she was in that state, because God poured out a measure of grace for her to bring her through. And had we closed the book and not allowed God's process to be fulfilled, we wouldn't know the person that she is today. And I don't think that that's the only storyline applicable to my mom. I think it's a storyline that we can all identify with. Like, who were you that was contrary to the expectations that people placed on you? And where would you be today if somebody would have said that that's the end of your story? We've got to be mindful of that, because there is grace for everybody. It's not just for us. Okay? And so we've got to really think about that, because we're robbing ourselves of beautiful encounters because our expectations are so flawed. And sometimes our expectations are so flawed because they're rooted in doctrine that's not supported by God. It's supported by tradition or our comfort zone, to be fair. So we've got to do that. And when I look at my mom and I look at the life that she impacts on a day-to-day basis, I thank God that he entrusted her with that journey. See, that's the thing. We have expectations for people, but God has entrusted them with a path that they have to walk through. And when that path does not mirror the traditional norm, I want us to not shy away from people because it doesn't look like what we're accustomed to. Lean into what you don't know. Lean in and ask the why questions and figure it out. And you may find that there's some deficiencies in your expectations and or belief systems, and it gives you an opportunity to grow up just a little bit. It gives you an opportunity to become more knowledgeable, because if we're going to go ye into the world, we've got to actually know what the world consists of. And we're never going to know what the world consists of if we stay within the confinements of our norms, customs, and outdated traditions. That was a rant, I know it, but that's just kind of where I feel about that topic, okay? So the cough is getting better, you guys. My allergies are not as bad as they were last week, so thank God for that. So I want to go into managing your expectations. And I picked up something and it said, expectations are truly like best guesses, and at the core of them, it's deeply held opinions mixed with a big dash of hope, right? So that's a non-tradition response to what someone says expectations are, right? So it's your hope, it's mixed with kind of some deep-seated things that you want. But what I want us to do is not fall prey to them. Like, you have to check your expectations. At some point, you've got to do some type of evaluation. So the best way to really manage your expectations is to never assume. Never assume. Ask questions. And if you're not in relationships with people where you can ask questions, I would ask you to consider, is that a relationship that you really want to be in? Because you've got to be able to ask questions. My mother has made me ask questions from a very young age. Like, I would ask why, how come, who said, where can I find more information on that? And it helped me, and that's probably why I am. That's probably why I am the way I am today. Like, I never just take anything at face value. I like to dig. Okay, but ask questions, because what happens is when we get into relationship with people and we just start making assumptions based on what we think they need, we become so common with them and so familiar with them that we may actually be responding or basing what we think they need on a version of themselves that they've outgrown, right? And so maybe people used to like to go hang out and have a huge social setting for their birthdays, but now they would actually rather like an intimate setting with family. But because we're just responding to them based on the mental map that we've created as it relates to what they desire, we stop asking. Never stop asking, never stop inquiring. Don't just assume, because it's the assumption that leads to the disappointment. Okay, so save yourself the effort, save yourself the time, spare yourself the disappointment, and ask the questions. Another way to manage your expectations is to remove unreasonable expectations from your relationships, be it personal or professional. Okay, you guys know I'm in HR, and one of the things that I see stifle people's professional development sometimes is because they fail to have expectations that are applicable to the track that they're on, right? And so they're not aligning themselves professionally to go where they would like to ultimately go when it comes to their professional trajectory. So you've got to have expectations that are aligned with where you intend to go, not where you want to go. And then set your mindset on the intended path so that you can continue to go in the direction that you desire. The moment you refocus, if your target is here and your focus is here, you're never going to reach it. So you have to have an expectation that's aligned with the direction that you're headed. And in your relationships, again, who is the person that stands before you? Does this person want to be anything different than what they are today? If not, you either choose to accept who you're in relationship with, or you move on, but you cannot keep demanding that they be something that they don't want to be. I know I keep harping on that, but I think it's really imperative that we understand that. And then being misunderstood, like when you have an expectation of somebody that's not aligned with their character and what their desires are, and they keep trying to communicate that to you, and it just continues to be a misunderstanding because you don't want to believe anything other than that, like, that is emotionally draining and relationally draining. Like, are you going to let me be who I'm telling you I am? Are you going to keep holding me captive to what you want me to be? Because I don't want to be imprisoned by that. I'm not interested. I want to go and flourish and be the person that I've worked my butt off to become. Let me be that. And if that person doesn't serve you well, I love you, but let's just not do this, because who has time? I don't really have time. Okay? And even the most introverted person wants to be connected. Like, people want to be in relationship, but they want to be in relationship and community where they can be themselves. Period. Nobody's interested in having to wear 5 masks to be included into this, that, or the third. I want to be me. I want to present Jamila, period. I'm not trying to be anything other than that. Can I bring myself? No? Okay, cool. I'm going to stay home. Okay, because I'm notorious. I ask, so you're inviting me into this space. Is this a space where I have to be a version of me, or is this a space where I have to be me? And then I make a decision on if whether or not I want to engage. And I think that y'all should be able to do that as well. Because if they can't accept and appreciate the you that you've worked to become, that's not a space that you need to be in anyway. And then I want to say this third point when it comes to managing our expectations: enjoy what your life looks like today. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but one of the greatest robbers of true satisfaction is not allowing yourself to sit in the joy of the present. Most times we find ourselves meditating on what was or planning on what's to come, but we spend very little time in the present. And so our mind is never at rest. We're never at a place of contentment and or satisfaction, because we're either remorseful over what happened in the past, so we're spending all of the time we have now to make something else manifest down the line. But what about the breath you just took, and the next breath, and the next breath? What about those gifts? We don't even take time to savor and enjoy them because we're so busy trying to get on to the next thing. I mentioned last week that I had gone away on vacation with my husband. And to know me is to know that my phone is always nearby. Like, my hearing aids are connected to it. It's a thing. I don't go anywhere without my cell phone. But it was 6 days of my phone having limited connectivity, right? I would get on Wi-Fi. I would call my son every evening, talk to my mom, talk to my best friend. But other than that, I was cut off from the world. And I didn't realize, because I kept getting these messages from messengers. I know God was sending it to me that I needed to rest. And I was like, I'm resting. I don't understand. Why do you keep telling me to rest? I don't understand. But I had gotten so accustomed to my life functioning at this high speed and high stress that I didn't even realize that my body was now normalizing it, right? And so I was in that space where I was meditating on what was and trying to plan for something to come, but I was not present in what was happening. And during those 6 days, I had time to just breathe and see my life for what it was, and appreciate that this time last year, I was making one of the greatest leaps of faith. And I was terrified, and I didn't know what was going to come of it, and I just knew that I was going to fail, and I had no real leg to stand on. Like, I wasn't stable. But when I had time to just reflect on it, I was like, you know what? Not only did I actually get exactly what I prayed for, I got more than, and I should take a moment to be fully present in that and enjoy and set expectations that are realistic about my now. Because once it's gone, I don't get it back. So learn to enjoy the life that you're living. Not that we don't plan for the future, not that we don't forecast, but if you never spend time in your present, you're never really living. You're just planning for what's next. Okay, so think about that, okay? And stop basing your contentment on when I get or if this happens. No, you're not going to be happy or if you get this other job. You can be at your peak of joy right now if you just become present in your reality. Like, think about it. Think about it. If you go back and you meditate on the verse that we gave last week, and you come into that divine perfection with your thought life, and you become fully aware of what you're thinking, what you're meditating on, and you come to a place of wholeness, there's so much joy in that. There's so much satisfaction and gratitude in that. But if we don't take time to just pause and let it sink in and let it become that which we express gratitude for, oh well, on to the next. Hopefully, that new job will make you feel better. I don't know, because every new thing comes with a new possible disappointment. So you might as well learn to enjoy what you have at your fingertips. Okay? So those are the 3 ways that we're managing our expectations. Now I want to talk about how we manage other people's expectations, because it doesn't matter how much I say manage expectations. Somebody has expectations of us, and we are going to respond to them one way or another, right? And when we haven't first learned how to master our own expectations, taking on the weight of that plus what somebody expects of us, that's where that whole I'm not good enough, I'm not qualified, that's where those thoughts start to creep in, because you're trying to balance all these expectations and we're coming up short and we feel like failures, and we're just like, what is it all for? Like, I should just have no expectations at all. I shouldn't even try to live up to those expectations because I'm always going to fail. And that's not the mindset that we ever want to get into. That's not a mindset that I endorse. No, we have to just decide how we're going to respond and to what we're going to offer a response, okay? So, number 1, we have to communicate, okay? You have to communicate, and sometimes you have to over communicate, because here is what I have learned. What you communicate, you have had time to sit with and kind of filter through and work through and create like a mental map around it. And so you have a structure on the thing that you're going to present already. The person that you're presenting that information to has to hear that information, filter that information, and then create their version of that structure in their mind. But the thing that you have to take into account is the information that you're giving them is going through their filters. So what you intended may not always be received the first time because it's going through someone else's filters, which is why sometimes you have to over communicate. You have to reiterate your point. You have to learn how to have clear and concise communication, and you have to understand the people that you're communicating with. What is their mode of communication? How do they receive information? Think about that. So when you decide that you're going to reach out and share information, share it in the way that's applicable to the recipient. Okay? My husband does not really like talking on the phone. That's not really his thing. He would prefer a text message. I want to talk. So but I know when I've reached my call quota for the day, because he'd be like, babe. I'm like, oh, okay, you want me to text you? That's his mode of communication. Now, if it's something urgent, of course he's going to pick up the phone. But when you're doing life with people, start to understand kind of how they work while they're taking in how you work, so you guys can meet somewhere in the middle, so that when you're communicating, there are less breakdowns in communication, because we're responding in the ways that the people we're doing life with receive the information. Okay? So it seems simple, but it doesn't always come across that way. In a professional setting, I don't like 50 emails about a single topic. I'm being very transparent. Like, I have a 3 email minimum. Like, I'm dead serious. Like, if we send like the email chain and we're at the 3rd one and it's just like paragraph on paragraph, I stop responding. I will pick up the phone and I'll call you, or I'll arrange a time for us to meet, because at this point, all the information is getting convoluted. We don't know the tone. We don't know the filter. So let's just stop so this doesn't derail. Let's bring this back on track by engaging in communication verbally. You have to know your audience and then know yourself. This is another reason why the exercise that I gave at the top matters. What is the mindset that you need to take on when you're about to engage in this communication, so that you don't jump out of character, so that what you're saying can be heard, and you know your triggers. Okay? Like, don't pop off the handle, because now you're becoming reactionary instead of responsive to what you need to express. And now it's all a waste, because you're emotionally charged, and what you wanted to say will no longer be heard. Okay? Anticipate problems. You have to anticipate problems. This is where strategy comes into place. Know what you're dealing with and have some contingencies in place. Okay? You know you're going to have a hard conversation. Go to a place where even if one's emotions start to rise, they can't act too unseemly because we're in a public setting. Or if you know the person that you need to talk to likes cake or pastries, go to a bakery or a coffee shop, or like think about it. So that you got to create a plan, anticipate problems again, because everybody's filters are different. And hard conversations are sometimes going to come with a little bit of a tip, okay? That's just unavoidable. That doesn't mean that we just hang our hats and don't have it, we avoid. Like that conflict avoidance issue, I can't stand it. Like you have got to decide to have the hard conversation. If the people are worth being in your life, hard conversations are going to come up. We don't run away from, but we lean into so that we can get to the other side of it. The sooner we address, come up with a plan and move forward, the sooner we can get back to living our best lives, right? And think about this too when you talk about anticipating problems. What you're presenting to somebody isn't the only thing that's happening in their life. So they may have other things that are going on that are playing a role, and kind of where they are and how they're responding and all of that. And we've got to stop personalizing everybody's response to us, because sometimes it has nothing to do with you, but everything to do with everything they're being required to walk through at this present time. So if they don't text you right back, they might not be ignoring you. If they didn't like the post that you thought everybody would respond to, it might not even really be about you. So we can't personalize everything. Give people the grace to walk through their independent journeys. And as you're presenting your stuff, keep in mind that you probably got some other stuff going on too. So some of your response may be influenced by things outside of the present circumstances. So plan for that. I say the easiest way to have hard conversation is to eat first, because people are less grouchy when they've had food. I am. Like, please don't call me into a meeting and you requiring me to fast, and it's gonna be a hard conversation because I'm gonna be looking at you like, so are we done? Because I'm hungry and you haven't even gotten to point two. So think about it. I'm not trying to be like make light of it or anything like that, but we are human, and there's some humanity that's going to come out in those situations. So just think about that. And then know your biases. This is a really, really big one. When you're talking about expectations, you have to know your biases. And if you come back and tell me, Jamila, I am a completely unbiased person, I'm going to call you a liar, because that's not true. Everybody has a preference. The mind has to compartmentalize information. So what the mind compartmentalizes as acceptable and true is the filter through which everything goes through. Wrong, right, or otherwise, that's how it works. And so if we're already making general blanket statements about how certain people are going to respond, or they did it this way, so that's how they're always going to do it, or whatever, know that. So when you go into these conversations, or you're doing life with these people and you have these things happening, you know what's going on in your mind, okay? Because that is how you're going to communicate. And so this is where having an accountability partner could really serve you well. Talk that through with somebody else who you entrust enough to tell you the truth about you, somebody that you'll listen to, somebody that'll say, you know what, you probably shouldn't say that like that, or is that really applicable to the current situation, or are you lacing that with past experiences? Like, you gotta know that, because you may be projecting something on somebody that's not even fitting to them, but maybe it reflects something that you've lived through in the past, and so you're just making it everybody's truth. And that's not fair, because you don't want people to categorize you based on something that's not applicable to the person that you are. So know that. Know the lenses through which you're judging people, or doing life with people, or choosing to not do life with people. Like, if you're still mad at somebody about something that happened like 10 years ago, and they're not that person anymore, but you just don't want to allow them to be who they are today, you probably need to check that. You probably need to check that, because that's not cool. And if you were the other person, you would be pretty annoyed with the fact that people just won't let you be. Like, so we gotta stop doing that. And then show your expectations that you run them and they don't run you. And you have the right to alter your expectations. You have the right to adjust them. You have the right to update them. You don't have to continue to set expectations that you know are no longer applicable. But in order to do that, you have to be brave enough to deal with the disappointments of the unmet expectations so that you can now start to just design realistic ones. And that's where the work comes into play. Are you brave enough to sit in the emotions, the trauma, the life experiences that your unmet expectations have yielded you? And are you brave enough to take the fragments of that and rebuild? Because that's really where it counts. I'm brave enough to say I set expectations that were misaligned with my purpose and calling. I'm brave enough to say that I had expectations of others because I needed them to fill voids that other people left me with. I'm brave enough to say that I was hesitant to love because love has always hurt, or love has always led me to disappointments. I'm brave enough to say that sometimes I like to numb my pain as opposed to deal with it, because every time someone let me down, I would just gravitate to something that I knew would soothe me instead of dealing with why I kept finding myself in the same scenario. Sit in the truth, sit in the ashes of your unmet expectations, and realize that something greater can come of that if you're willing to be put in the process, if you're willing to commit to the work, if you're willing to direct your focus in the area that you're really trying to go in. And now we can live a life that is aligned with purpose. Because I will tell you, every expectation that you have set that is misaligned with the purpose and plan for your life is an expectation that is going to fail you. Every relationship that you yoke up with that is misaligned with your purpose will be a relationship that fails. Everything that's misaligned with who you're commissioned to be is going to fail you. And then we're going to have to sit with the truth of it. And I'm not saying it to bash anybody, because I've lived it. I know it. I can write a book about it. But the thing that I'm learning in hindsight is there are some beautiful lessons that I now get to apply. And there's some things that come up and they allow me to say, you know what? You've lived through something similar, but instead of blanketing this experience with what you've already lived through, how about we take it at face value this time and see what you can learn of it? Remember the lessons of yesterday, but be open to the lessons that today will bring. That's a realistic expectation. A realistic expectation is that those that we are the closest to are the most likely to hurt us because they know the deep-seated things. They know us. They know us and they love us all the more, but they are the most likely to hurt us. So there's a level of grace that they need. In the church, stop putting ministerial individuals on pedestals, and when they don't live up to them, then say, well, that's why I don't go to church. No way. Especially when we are failing in the same areas that we're judging other people on. I'm just saying. Y'all, my grandma's online. Hey, Grandma. Y'all, I love that lady. I learned so much from her. And she's on Facebook Live right now, so we got to shout out my grandma. Hey, Evangelist. Hey, girl. The one thing my grandma, listen, I'm going to tell you an expectation that came from my grandma since I'm shouting her out. My grandma, if one of the cousins did wrong, the expectation was that we were all getting beat, okay? So we knew, hey, we need to do right because, Gwendolyn Faye does not play, and she's going to go get that paddle, and she doesn't care who did it. She wants to know why nobody was bold enough to say, don't do it, because grandma's not going to be here for that. Like, have some expectations, okay, that are truly aligned with where you're going. I would ask that you would take a minute, write down your expectations, and then ask God to tell you what he thinks of them. Or ask him to implant his expectations in your heart. That's what it means when he says he'll give you the desires of your heart. He implants his desire for you, and you desire it, and it manifests. It's not a scripture to just say, I can set my affections on whatever, and God is going to give me that, because no, he's not. No, he's not. That's like a parent giving the child everything that they want, knowing it's not good for them. God's not going to do that. So my husband said it on Sunday, and it tickled me so. But he said, we put these things out there. And then when they, and we say, God said, because we don't want to have to answer the question as to why this is the expectation or why this is the thing that we have set our affections on, or why this is the thing that we're going to go after. And because we don't want to answer, we say, God said. We just blame Jesus. And then when it fails, you're like, oh, well, I must have missed God. Okay, now listen. Either God said it or it didn't. Like, we gotta stop blaming Jesus. Be honest. If this is your desire and this is your expectation for your life, if somebody asks you, you can be like, what, this is what I think. I probably need to go into my prayer closet and see if it's aligned where God is leading me, but this is kind of what I want. Own your stuff. If it's your expectation, own it. Don't put that on Jesus. Don't be lying on my Jesus like that. We don't have time, okay? We don't have time for that. Now listen, I want to say this so that we can have a map. You have to get comfortable with expectations that are realistic and achievable. And I know we're always told to set the bar really high, and that's great, but you have to have some expectations that are achievable. So if you have a high expectation, you've got to have some mile markers, and you've got to have some triumphs along the journey. So as you're working towards this thing, you don't burn out and feel like a failure, okay? If they're not, think about that. If people are putting expectations on you that are not realistic and achievable, push back and be like, you know what? I know this is your expectation, but this is where I am, and I don't know that I can fulfill that. So give people the opportunity to find somebody else that can meet the expectation if it's not you, and don't be mad about it. Like, just be excited about the fact that you didn't get boxed into that because it wasn't something you wanted to do and you don't want to be held captive to. So now you just got free. See how that works? Push back on expectations that are unrealistic, one that we place on ourselves, and the expectations that other people put on us. So before we go, I want to leave us with a journal prompt like we would normally do, and then I'm going to bid you good night and farewell. But tonight I really want you to think about it. Like, we've talked a lot about how we manage our personal expectations and then how we manage the expectations of other people. And what I want us to write about tonight is, what ways have you seen unrealistic expectations hurt your personal life, hurt you in your business life? How have you seen expectations that are unrealistic, unmet, damage those relationships? And once you become honest about that, that's what I'm talking about, sitting in the truth of what those expectations have left or made your life to be. Sit in the truth of that, and then let's create a new reality. Let's create expectations that are truly aligned with where we're going, because we all have some unmet expectations. But did we communicate them? Did people know we were holding them to those standards? Were they realistic? Were they aligned with where we were going? Did we ever push back on expectations that were placed on us? Like, did we complete the steps? And if not, let's talk about how we can be better with it going forward, okay? Because we owe it to ourselves to live the life that we were always purposed to live, but we have to have our expectations set in the right vein. Okay, I love you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will again upload tonight's episode on YouTube. Look for it by Friday or Saturday. Sometimes, I have other things that I gotta take care of, but I promise you it will be online by this weekend. And if you want to dig deeper into kind of how we broke down the mind and how we make sure that we understand how it works, go listen to episode 9, which is Mind Matters. It's currently uploaded on the YouTube channel, just so you can get some background. And again, do that exercise, because I really think it's helpful, it's beneficial, and it helps you again to be responsive to your day as opposed to being reactionary. Thank you guys so much. Have a good night.